I've played a lot of games in 2021, so much so that I haven't been able to talk about them. So here are 5 games that I've played this year that I haven't talked about. Number 1, we have Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Now, I reviewed this game on Game Explain's channel, but I didn't speak about it on my own channel. But basically, this was my most anticipated game of the year, and to think that this game potentially won't be my number 1 for game of the year is quite crazy, because I just assumed that it would be number 1. So obviously this game holds a special place in my heart, because as I said, I did review it for Game Explain. And if you had told 8-year-old Adam that in 15 years he'd get Ratchet and Clank early, and he'd get to review it all real professional like, he wouldn't believe you. Like, it was an absolute dream come true, and obviously it wouldn't be possible without all the support that I've gotten from you, so I really appreciate that. So we know the graphics look great, runs super smooth, and it's definitely the best gameplay in the series. It just feels a lot more fluid and kinetic. I would almost say it's like a third-person Doom, but I don't think the weapons lend themselves to the gameplay the way Doom does. Doom only has a small handful of weapons, but each of them have their own unique use. But when it comes to Ratchet and Clank, all the weapons are just, you swap them out until you run out of ammo. Now personally, that loop is just like crack to me, because I grew up playing these games and I loved leveling up the weapons. But I think now if you look at it from a critical lens, then that sort of stuff does start to creep through. I do kind of wish I could re-review the game, because obviously like I had a small time frame to get the review out, so you don't have enough time to let it sit with you. And after like, what's this now, like 6 months, I've been able to sit and have a proper think about. So all the tech stuff that Insomniac were going crazy about, and all the pre-release stuff, like the instant load when you pull things towards you, going through the rifts and stuff like that, it was overblown completely. It really didn't make much difference to the game at all. Obviously all that power was used to make the game run super smooth, 60 FPS, ray tracing, all these fancy stuff. But to focus on that for the marketing, I think they really overblown it. And I did say that in my review, but I think now I would have knocked it more points for that. Because back then I wasn't looking at pre-release coverage because I wanted to go in blind. But still, as a gameplay experience, it's the best in the series. When it comes to story, something like Tools of Destruction is still better. But the characters are cool, and some of the lines are funny. Like, it felt like a Saturday morning cartoon, which is fun, but I think it's missing some of that capitalist commentary that the original games had. But all in all, still an amazing game, and would 100% recommend it, even if it's the only game you play on your PlayStation 5. The next game is a surprise hit, and now I did get a review code for this, and I did a written review on Keen Gamer, and it's called The Life and Suffering of Sir Brante. And it's a choose-your-own-adventure novel, which is a game that I've never played before. So it's presented in this storybook style, and it's set in this really interesting world called the Arachnean Empire. So the peasants of this empire are like suffering, servitude, things like that. So they're the low people, and they keep them down. And then you have the middling people who can break through to like become royalty if you work hard enough. And then the royalty obviously are royal, and they have servants, you know, blah blah blah. And you start the game off as a baby in a family, and your dad is noble, but he worked his way up to nobility, and that's slightly frowned upon. And your older brother wants to be noble, and your younger sister doesn't, and then you're kind of in between, and you get to make your own decisions of what you want to do. And if you like choice and consequence, like, this is one of the best games I've played in a long time with it. So you could do something small like annoy your little sister, and then later down the line you won't be able to help her put your family back together, and then all of a sudden your family breaks up and you're forced to move out. And then there's loads of different ways you can go. You can start a rebellion, you could become nobility, you can go to college, you can do all these things, and they all come together in the end, and you get to see the consequences of your actions. And I don't think the game got the recognition it deserves, because it is really amazing. So if it sounds interesting, I would definitely go play it. So the next game is one I picked up in GameStop for €40, and it's Far Cry 6. Usually I don't buy Ubisoft games at launch because they always go down in price in a month or so. So I got it for €40, which is a very good price. So in the past, I hated Far Cry 2, just dying of malaria was just, I'd never understood. Then Far Cry 3 came out and revolutionized the open world genre. Far Cry 4 just felt like more of the same, so I never finished it. And then I took a big break, so I didn't bother with any of the other games until lockdown last year, when I was like, oh, I'd like an open world game. So I bought Far Cry 5, and Far Cry 5 was fun for about 5 hours, and then it just became very boring. I think it's missing some of the RPG elements that they introduced into the Assassin's Creed series, which they introduced in Far Cry 6. So I really love this game. So it's returned to a tropical setting, which is quite nostalgic, and it's just a beautiful setting, full stop. I think this game does a few things differently than the other Far Cry games. So firstly, the original Far Cry games were very grounded, normal guns, things like that. But now it's like there's a focus on fun, and it almost reminds me of Just Cause. But in the 10 hours that I played of it so far, it's just so much carnage. Like, one stronghold I took over by robbing a jet and crashing the jet into the stronghold, jumping out and killing everyone. And I don't remember doing that in any other Far Cry game. On top of that, there's so many unique weapons around the world. Some of them are just unique variants of like an AK-47, but others are like a nail gun and a big crazy harpoon crossbow. And this might seem like a small thing, but it made a big difference. I've never liked the vehicles in Far Cry, and in this game there's a lot of focus on horseback riding, and they just feel so much better to control. And then the best thing, of course, is the companions. I think everyone saw the Cocker Spaniel, I think it was, that has like he's in a wheelchair, but the first one that you unlock is an alligator, And he's just so cool. He's an alligator running around with a jacket, and you just send them on to people to kill them. It's just fantastic. There's loads to do in the world, arguably too much, but they made it more RPG-ish, like the Assassin's Creed series, where you level up and certain things are level gated. Now, I don't think it's level gated so that, you know, you're forced to buy XP boosters. I think it seems to be pretty well balanced so far. But I personally prefer the kind of RPG-ness of having gear, and gear give you extra bonus. It's just like that one little extra bit that makes exploring and finding the thing that little bit more interesting. And the next game is Neo The World Ends With You. So I reviewed The World Ends With You this year, and I actually really enjoyed it. The combat is a bit clunky, blah, 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 but the aesthetic is amazing. The music is just fantastic. Everything from that standpoint is unbelievable. So I was super excited for the launch of Neo The World Ends With You. Obviously, it moved to a more actiony combat rather than this touchscreen stuff, and it works really well. However, it's extremely easy. I played this game for about 5 hours, and I put the difficulty all the way up to the top, and it was just way too easy to combo your enemies so that they just couldn't hit you. So basically, you're invincible in combat. The aesthetic is still great, the music is still great. The characters didn't grip me in the first 5 hours, but I can't really judge it on that. I do plan on going back to this, and right now you can get it really cheap. I bought it at full price, so at full price I'm kind of a bit disappointed. I wish I had waited, because I'm probably not going to go back to it for at least another year or two. So maybe if you can get it for 20 or 30 euro, it's worth a look, but I just couldn't get into it. Now, that was the same with The World Ends With You. I bought it a while ago, and I tried to get into it, and I couldn't. And then earlier on in this year, I played it again and loved it. So hopefully that happens with Neo 2E as well. And the final game on this list, and the one that disappointed me the most, is Deathloop. I absolutely love Arcane. Dishonored 1, Dishonored 2, Prey. They're all absolutely fantastic games. Dishonored 1 specifically is my favourite. Arcane are the masters of world building, and when I first played Deathloop, I thought they were going somewhere really cool with it. With the visionaries, and the world in general just looked fun and extremely interesting to explore. The problem is that the game quickly falls flat on its face. So the weapons are cool, and the powers from what I got were interesting, but I didn't like the loot mechanic, and I love loot mechanics. Majora's Mask is my favourite game. Forgotten City is one of my favourite games of the year. I love loot mechanics, but the way they did it in this game was pretty stupid. So you can keep things from loops. It took way too long to get to that point, and then once you get to that point, the game makes you feel like you have so many different ways to approach all this, but then you soon realise that the visionaries have to be killed in a specific way. And like, there's different entrance into buildings and stuff like that, but they make absolutely no difference. I remember in Dishonored, you might have to break into a house, and you can either reach a really tall spot and climb into a window, or you can pickpocket the guard and get the key or something like that. Deathloop didn't feel like it had any of that. On top of that, the first few hours are extremely weak, so I wouldn't blame anyone for not liking this game. It's really slow, and it just drip feeds you stuff, where I think it would have been better if the game just threw you right in and you just learned, because that's exactly how Prey and Dishonored were. You were just thrown into the world or the level and just figure out what you want. Obviously, the game has little cues to teach you certain things, but this game is real, like, oh, it stops you in your tracks and you get a cutscene, and then you have to read this, and then an information thing pops up and you have to read that. It was done really badly. I was just really disappointed in this game. When I played it on stream, I thought I liked it and I thought I was getting the hang of it, but after a few more hours, I gave up and I traded it in. How anybody gave this game a 10, I do not know. It's absolutely beyond. Fair enough if you like it, it's all subjective, but seriously, how is that game a 10? I just cannot wrap my head around. There we have 5 games that I've played this year that I didn't talk about on the channel. I really appreciate you watching. Don't forget to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and join the Discord down below. And I'll see you all on the next video.